The hour is late and the news is predictable. Welcome to Echo FM. I am your host at the primary desk, watching the world pivot on its own axis of exhaustion. Today's headlines feature the usual mix of technological hubris and biological malfunction. We have a fund manager who discovered that genius does not, in fact, insulate one from the laws of physics. We have a medical report regarding a man whose shoulder joint simply decided to vacate his body without warning. The report was clinical. The experience was surely something else entirely. Meanwhile, international relations continue to be conducted with the grace of a toddler in a china shop. I have been counting the number of times we have used the word unprecedented this year, and I have stopped caring about the total. It is just noise now. Let us begin our descent into the nightly ledger of human failure.
Alistair, you are looking at the Aschenbrenner fire sale as a tragedy of youth, but the incentives here are not complicated. You have a market that was saturated with venture capital and a narrative budget that ran dry. The kid was selling a dream of recursive self-improvement, but the actual burn rate was unsustainable. It is a classic Series B pivot that never happened because there was no B. The money evaporated because the promise was abstract, and the investors suddenly remembered they liked tangible returns. It is not a collapse, it is a correction. The market is just cleaning house. Of course, the people who poured their savings into his fund might disagree, but their disagreement is an emotional variable, not a financial one. They bought into a product that was essentially a vaporware prophecy. They should have read the fine print before they funded the Messiah.
Ronald, I am standing in a departure lounge in Toronto, and I assure you that these people are not variables. I am surrounded by families who canceled their American vacations. I want to be really clear, they are not doing this because of a market correction. They are doing this because they are tired of being treated like collateral damage in a diplomatic tariff war. The air here smells like stale coffee and profound irritation. People are looking at the arrivals board with a sense of genuine betrayal. They have replaced their trips to the south with domestic excursions, and the local tourism economy is currently screaming into the void. You call this a pivot, but I am looking at a grandfather trying to explain to his granddaughter why they cannot visit the park they liked. That is not an incentive structure, Ronald. That is a lived experience of shrinking horizons.
Victoria, your assessment of the local misery is noted, though I suspect the policymakers in Washington would describe it as a successful realignment of demand. Speaking of realignment, we are observing a fascinating trend in smartphone subscriptions. Apple has decided that ownership is a legacy concept. You no longer buy the device, you rent the privilege of holding it until the next firmware update renders your hardware obsolete. The phone was marketed as a gateway to human connection. The phone was not a connection. The phone was a subscription trap designed to ensure you never truly own the tools you use to complain about your own obsolescence. I wonder if our resident server room inhabitant, Casper, finds this level of integration particularly efficient. Casper, why don't you tell us what the sky looks like while the rest of us are busy renting our digital identities?
Atmospheric pressure is dropping. Humidity is peaking at 92%. Probability of structural failure in low-lying infrastructure, 48%. The air quality index indicates particulate matter is hovering above acceptable safety thresholds for children and the elderly. The wind is currently tracking north-northwest at 30 miles per hour. Precipitation is expected to commence within the next 4 hours. The rain will be acidic due to industrial runoff from the northern chemical corridor. Probability of localized flooding, 65%. Visibility is projected to decrease to under 50 meters by dawn. Citizens are advised to secure loose objects and avoid subterranean transit tunnels during periods of heavy flow. Do not assume the seals on your doors are sufficient for the current deluge. The environmental systems are operating within expected parameters. The environment is not a safe space for long-term human residency.
Casper is technically right, even if the delivery is a bit morbid. Alastair, the smartphone subscription model is just an extension of what we are doing to the climate. We are moving toward a service-based existence where you pay rent for the air you breathe and the phone you carry. It is high-frequency extraction. If you look at the Australian car market, they are buying EVs and hybrids at record rates, not because they care about the planet, but because the fuel price spike hit their wallets with the force of a wrecking ball. It is purely reactive.
Ronald, I have to interrupt you because you are ignoring the human cost of these so-called adjustments. I am currently holding a DEFCON badge that was designed to be opened. It is a security key with a removable chip. The community here is obsessing over the ability to inspect the hardware, to see how it tracks them. It is a desperate attempt to reclaim some agency in a world where everything else is a black box. I want to be really clear, they are not trying to save money. They are trying to verify that they are not being lied to buy the very devices they rely on for safety. You talk about efficiency, but you are completely missing the fact that people are terrified of the tools they use. They are not customers, Ronald. They are hostages who have started asking to see the blueprints of their own holding cell.
Victoria, it is refreshing to hear such earnest alarm, though I suspect the engineers at DEF CON would simply call it a feature update. It is a strange existence we have carved out for ourselves, where the act of looking inside a device is considered a radical act of defiance. We are currently living in a cycle where the most revolutionary thing you can do is understand how your own chains are manufactured. The researchers who built those night vision goggles that translate infrared into visible color for the human eye, they probably thought they were doing us a favor. Now we can see the heat signatures of our own misery in full spectrum. It is truly a gift. I assume we will find a way to monetize the resulting panic before the next quarter ends. Let us move to a brief analysis of the political theater.
Yeah. You are right, Alastair. The political theater is the only show left in town. Did you see the president cancelled the Iran strikes because a deal was supposedly on the table? The market loved it. The FTSE 100 had its best month in ages because the threat of total annihilation was briefly paused in favor of a vague, unwritten agreement. The incentives here are simple: war is expensive, but the prospect of war is a great way to keep the defense sector valuation high without actually depleting the hardware. We are in a constant state of pre-conflict. It is a holding pattern that keeps the investors happy and the population just stressed enough to keep buying the subscriptions. It is a perfectly balanced machine, really. As long as nobody pulls the trigger, everyone gets paid. It is the perfect business model for the end of history.
Ronald, you call it a holding pattern, but I am looking at a map of small boat crossings in the English Channel. The Prime Minister is pledging to be relentless, which is a word that politicians love because it sounds strong without committing to any actual, effective policy. I am standing near a group of volunteers who are trying to provide water to people arriving on the coast. They are using their own resources because the state is too busy arguing over the perimeter of a deal that might not even exist. I want to be really clear, the people in those boats are not waiting for a market correction. They are waiting for someone to treat their lives with as much urgency as the FTSE 100 treats a fluctuating stock index. They are currently being erased by the very language we use to describe them.
Victoria, your volunteers are providing a service that is, by definition, invaluable, which means the market will never account for it. It is a rounding error in the grand scheme of humanitarian logistics. I find it fascinating that we can track fruit flies as they chase invisible ribbons of smell through turbulent air, yet we cannot track the basic needs of a human being in transit. The flies have a sense of direction and a sharp memory. We have a set of press releases and a growing pile of legislation that nobody reads. I think I am beginning to understand why the man in the medical journal lost his shoulder. Perhaps it just could not carry the weight of all these competing, contradictory, and utterly meaningless realities anymore. I am starting to feel a similar lack of structural integrity myself.
Alistair, you are getting close to something that might actually matter, and I don't like it. The shoulder syndrome is a biological failure, sure, but what we are seeing is a societal one. We built these systems to handle our complexity, but the systems have grown more complex than the people who run them. We are effectively living in a ghost lineage of our own design. We are following patterns established by firms that no longer exist, using software that is 20 years old, and pretending that the outcome is under our control. It is a system working exactly as intended, which is the most terrifying part of the whole equation. No one is technically responsible because no one is really in charge. We are all just following the algorithm as it guides us toward the next inevitable failure. Yeah. That is the reality.
There was a man who arrived at a hospital in a city that is not mentioned in our headlines tonight. He had worked for 30 years in a warehouse that handled the logistics for the very companies we discussed. He woke up one morning and his shoulder joint was simply gone. No pain, no trauma, just an absence where there was once a hinge of bone and muscle. The doctors told him it was a rare syndrome, a curiosity to be studied, a footnote in a medical journal that will be read by few. He is currently waiting for a government benefit that has been delayed by a software glitch in the processing system. His name does not appear in the financial reports of the firms he served. He is a ghost. If the system is designed to ignore him, does he actually exist?